Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We're kicking our response again into high gear.
Reassuring British Columbians as we dive headfirst into another heat wave. Also,
looking out the backyard and watching it just go over that far in the distance.
concern as hot, windy conditions hamper efforts to battle BC's wildfires and people refuse to leave.
Go away, coyote! Go away!
A 5-year-old hurt after another coyote attack in Stanley Park.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Well, the effort is on to try to reassure British Columbians that this time people will be safe during our current heat wave. Scorching temperatures over the next few days mean plenty is being done to prevent the number of deaths we saw back in June. Isabel Regam joins us live now from Hawthorne Rotary Park in Surrey. Isabel, how hot is it there?
Anita, it is 31 degrees. It feels a lot hotter, and this is going to be the range for the next few days. In the interior, that is going to pick up one day later, starting more so tomorrow. In the Fraser Health region, or Fraser Valley region, I should say, Environment Canada is warning that the daytime highs will range from 34 to 38 degrees, feeling as high as the low 40s. And now today, the province is trying to ensure and reassure British Columbians it is ready for this heat wave after hundreds of people died in that first heat wave we saw earlier in the summer. It says now all hands are on deck.
We're kicking our response again into high gear. In acute care, staff is being increased in ERs to meet expectant demand, and additional measures are being taken to keep people in hospital cool and safe.
Minister Dick says they've brought in more emergency call takers to handle the likelihood of increased 911 calls. While temperatures are not expected to be as hot as the deadly heat wave in June, the danger still exists. Dr. Bonnie Henry says the province and the coroner have been working together to learn more about the causes of death from last time and trying to come up with a way to prevent a repeat.
Recognizing the indoor temperatures getting up so high, having that really quick, in some cases within hours, fatal effect on people whose bodies can't adapt to that heat over a prolonged period of time. That's something we hadn't ever experienced in British Columbia before.
Yeah, and Isabel, you know, we all tend to feel super hot when the temperature is high, maybe sometimes a bit lightheaded from the warm weather, a bit lethargic. But what are the symptoms to watch for so we know, hey, something is wrong, we need to get help now?
Well, there's a long list of symptoms to check. Here are a few of them to monitor: pale, cool, moist skin, heavy sweating, muscle cramps, a rash, swelling, especially hands and feet, fatigue, weakness, lightheadedness and or fainting, headache, nausea and or vomiting. But really, when it comes to this heat, use your gut. If something doesn't feel right, call and reach out for help. One of those ways to do that is to call 811 for questions or 911 if you feel like something isn't right. Now, also make sure to check on vulnerable populations. So if you know any little ones or seniors or people with mobility issues, make sure to check in on them. Now, one thing Dr. Bonnie Henry said today that was interesting is that when you're using fans, if you're just blowing hot air around, it can actually have a dehydrating impact. So she warns, instead of just having hot air blowing around with the fan, try to put an ice tray in front of that fan or have a damp towel on your body to at least have some cool air moving or some coolness to your body. All in all, the government is trying to say that this time we are ready and that we're going to be preventing, hopefully, the tragedies that we saw last time. Anita?
Isabel Regam reporting live for us tonight from Surrey. Thanks, Isabel. Now, meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with the forecast. I did not know that about the fans. Good information to have during this heat wave. What are you keeping an eye out for, Joe?
Yeah, that stuck out to me as well. I was listening to the presser with Dr. Henry, and Isabel actually asked Dr. Henry to clarify on that. And I think we all sort of took something away that fans on its own, not going to cut it, but so many of us are just working with fans. And I want to start with a series of boards to kind of show you where we're at right now. This is not the hottest of the days. We're still to get into our hot air. It is 25 right now at YVR, 30 out towards Abbotsford. There is already a humid X factor. So feeling like 31 at YVR, feeling like 37 in Pitt Meadows. One of the other factors we keep talking about, the overnight temperatures. Look as I take you through the overnight, not looking to get much below 19, 20, 21 degrees for your Thursday morning. Okay, last forecast board I want to show you for now. This is the forecast temp for tomorrow across the South Coast. This is straight model data, but I took a look at different models and I've chosen one of the more aggressive ones because it's starting to look like tomorrow could actually be challenging the kind of heat we saw in late June. We've got a bit of a downsloping effect, so winds racing from the interior towards the coast. It won't be as long duration as the one at end of June, but these temperatures will be challenging all-time August records. And Anita, for YVR, we could even be breaking all-time temperature records. So be prepared for an incredibly hot Thursday, and that'll linger through Friday. I'll take you through to the eventual end of the heat wave coming up a little later on.
Okay, and we will also be talking wildfires a little bit more later on as well. This is obviously bad for that situation too. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, here in BC, the province is on board with a federal government plan to create a proof of vaccination document that we can all use for international travel.
These credentials will have a common design across all provinces. They will include the holder's COVID-19 vaccination history, including the vaccine types, date, and location.
A vaccination credential for travel is expected to be in place by early fall. The government is aiming for it to be digital, but it will also be available for those without access to a device. Canadians would be able to present the document for access to a foreign country when returning home, and the BC government says it's already working with Ottawa.
We're working to ensure that the details of it, of course, the requirement to have information accessible and to have privacy considerations taken into account, all of those things are in place.
The federal government is leaving the door open to having this vaccine certification used domestically if provinces are interested. Now, there are 536 new COVID-19 cases tonight in BC. That's the highest daily total we've seen in 3 months. Nearly 50% of those cases are in the Interior Health region. 72 patients are in hospital, with 29 in intensive care. Sadly, one more person has died of the virus. Well, there's been another coyote attack in Stanley Park to tell you about tonight, once again on a child. It's the latest in a long string of bites and chomps in the forest since December. Conservation officers are asking people to avoid the park. That is where we find our Dan Burrett tonight, though. Dan, what happened this time?
Picture this, around 9:30 last night here at Prospect Point, conservation officers say a family was out for a walk. That's when they say their 5-year-old was ahead of them running. Chased that animal away, and thankfully, conservation officers say the boy only suffered minor injuries and is said to be out of a hospital and going to be fine. But this is the 32nd time, at least, that a coyote has attacked a person in this park since December. Conservation officers euthanized 4 coyotes last month, and again, they're urging people to stay out of this park. It turns out the park board says the family involved in this attack are from out of province, out of town, and may not have known about the warning around these coyotes. Still, we've spoken with many people here today at Prospect Point. It's been busy, and they say they'll keep an eye out.
Yeah.
Why would you not come? This is a big park.
Yeah.
You know, there's animals in here, and you got to keep an eye on your kids.
I think as long as you stay together, like we were always really close with our kids, so we don't let them wander off in the.
That is important for sure. And Dan, we know researchers have been trying to figure out what's behind these attacks. What do we know about that?
Well, UBC scientists believe that about 12 coyotes have long lived in this park, but they call the new conflicts with people, especially at night, especially involving people running or jogging unprecedented. That's their word. As well, they say food from park goers, people in the park late at night, dumped garbage, and a loss of fear of humans are also believed to be factors. But for now, conservation officers again ask people not to come here. And if you do, you need to be aware that trails are closing, you're not supposed to go down there, and that if you do run into a coyote, be prepared that it might be aggressive. And we've talked with people here from Toronto to Texas to the interior, and they say some of them said they were aware of the issue, others say nope, but they will do their best to avoid the animals. Anita.
Stanley Park is the place to go for tourists. Dan Burrett live in the park tonight. Thanks, Dan. And a warning tonight about a concerning uptick in sexual assaults in Vancouver. 16 stranger sex assaults have been reported to Vancouver police in the city last month. That's up from 7 pre-pandemic in July of 2019. The VPD says many of the incidents happened in the Granville Entertainment District, and the worry is there may be more that have gone unreported.
Since July 1st of this year, there have been 8 incidences related to the Granville Entertainment District. Those 8 incidents range from groping, unwanted touching, to forced sexual intercourse.
Police are asking anyone who has experienced unwanted touching or worse to call 911. A West Shore RCMP outside of Victoria say officers and a staff at a summer camp helped stop a child abduction in progress this morning in Metchosin. Police say camp staff at Pearson College called 911 around 8:30. They say a man not on the approved pickup list was trying to leave with a 7-year-old boy in his SUV. Staff tried to stop the man. Mounties found the vehicle nearby, arrested him, and secured the boy.
One of our camp leaders immediately alerted the camp manager, who in turn called our 911. RCMP were here within minutes, fast enough so that they were able to block off the access road, and then subsequently found where this individual was and the child, everyone safely.
RCMP said the boy was physically unharmed and he was returned to his guardians. The man is a 46-year-old resident of Souk. He is in custody under arrest for abduction. Police say he is known to the child but is not a parent. Well, the air remains hazy in many parts of this province tonight. More than 260 wildfires are burning, and with a new heat warning, there are fears of new blazes erupting. Katie Nicholson has been talking to people in the province's interior who are trying to decide whether to stay or go.
Rosie the dog paddles through the smoke-covered lake. She and owner Summer Brooks, part of a chaotic evacuation Friday night when wind whipped up the White Rock Lake fire.
There's just drunk bachelorettes all over the streets at La Casa, and we've got headlamps on, no power, pitch black, packing up like the freezer.
The evacuation order for her area was rescinded, but it remains on alert, and Brooks isn't comfortable going back just yet. Some even question staying in the region long term.
I can deal with 2-3 weeks of smoke a year, but I can't do 4 months of smoke at 40-some degrees.
We just washed all our bedding and put it.
Other evacuees did return, albeit with 1 foot out the door.
We're living out of a suitcase.
Yeah, same here. I've left everything in the camper. We want to be ready if we have to leave again. You know, we don't want the chaos that we had last time.
On Friday night, smoke plumed up and blanketed the area around Vernon. It rained soot, singed moss, needles, and embers. Jane Agnew and Teresa Wittenberg's homes just south of the worst of it.
The power went out and then we got evacuated. So yeah, there was a lot of stumbling around in the dark and a lot of, tensions were a little bit high.
Yesterday, the province poured bucket after bucket of water over the problem area in the fire's northwest corner. But temperatures are now back up into the punishing 30s, which means that water can more easily evaporate.
To show you what firefighters in this region are up against all over this area. There are trees like this with this kind of brown, dry, dying stuff. It all falls to the floor. Down here you have ideal fuel for a fire.
Today, the wildfire service confirmed what some already knew. A half-dozen structures now gone. They may be home for now, but
we might have to leave again, and but it is what it is. it's the new normal, I think, because of all this global warming. It's going to be like this for years.
Not enough to drive some from the place they call home. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Fintry, BC.
And the federal government is tightening restrictions on chemical retardants that pose a risk to firefighters and the environment. Some chemical flame retardants that are found in common household products and toys can put fire crews in danger. Researchers have found higher levels of these chemicals in the blood of firefighters. Now, firefighters have a higher chance of certain cancers. Now the country is taking steps to restrict their use.
It is clear that stronger action is needed to protect Canadians and the environment from these substances, and that is why we are prohibiting the manufacture, import, use, and sale of these flame retardants. This is the right thing for the health and safety of Canadians, our environment, and our communities.
The federal government is also sponsoring the development and use of safer flame retardants as an alternative. A woman is in hospital, seriously hurt after a workplace incident in Burnaby earlier today. Police say the traffic flagger was hit by a commercial vehicle around 11 this morning. It happened here at a work site at Ellesmere Avenue and Hastings Street. Closed down the area for quite some time. RCMP and WorkSafe BC are investigating, and they're asking for witnesses or anyone with potential dash cam footage to contact them. A Huawei executive, Meng Wanzhou's formal extradition hearing is close to wrapping up. This is 2.5 years after she was arrested at YVR to be sent to the U.S. Now Canada must decide if it will in fact send her there. Karen Pauls takes us through what happened today in the courtroom.
Meng Wanzhou arrived at court today to hear the Crown's arguments in favor of extradition.
Today, the court connects the dots between evidence and law and argument.
Meng was arrested at Vancouver's airport in December 2018. She spent a week behind bars before being released on $10 million bail. Living under partial house arrest in a $14 million home, Meng has a curfew and is being tracked by a GPS ankle monitor and security guards. Her legal team maintains the arrest violated her democratic rights and that she was used as a political pawn by then-President Donald Trump. But today, before a judge, the Crown argued this process has been fair and that there is evidence of fraud.
It's not a trial. The bar for extradition is very low.
The U.S. extradition request has worsened relations between Canada and China, which has repeatedly called for Meng's release. When Joe Biden was elected president, there was hope he would retract the extradition request, but he hasn't.
Well, I think that the Americans are, clearly they're not keen to just drop it. Having invested a fair effort into preparing the case.
Adding to the complexity, China's espionage cases against Canadians Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig.
We want our two Michaels back. It might be possible through negotiations between Washington and China to work out some kind of compromise arrangement, a plea deal perhaps.
Meng's lawyers will begin their submissions on Friday. After that, the judge will either order her discharge or recommend that she be extradited to the United States to face trial. But that decision could still take months, and it ultimately rests in the hands of Canada's Justice Minister. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Vancouver.
While that was happening here in Vancouver, the federal government was speaking out today in Ottawa, one day after the conviction and sentencing for Canadian Michael Spavor in China. And as Evan Dyer shows us, some say there may be an opportunity here.
Martin Magnuson, Swedish Embassy.
Stephanie Breder, Netherlands Embassy.
Rasmus Mortensen, Danish Embassy.
Diplomats from 25 countries showed support at Canada's embassy as Michael Spavor learned his fate. Today, China's embassy in Ottawa accused Canada of forming gangs to put pressure on the Chinese side and claimed it was completely futile. Canadian Ambassador Dominic Barton said Canadian officials are still trying to understand Spavor's sentence.
11 years and then deportation. He wants to get home. Is there a chance, to get home earlier?
China sentenced Canadian Kevin Garrett to 8 years with deportation in 2016. Deportation would normally occur only after the sentence is served.
Within 36 hours, I was deported.
So my hope for Michael is that the same would happen, because the Chinese government can deport him at any time.
Former Canadian Ambassador Guy Saint-Jacques was closely involved in that case.
Of course, at that time, we were able to get him deported the day after his sentencing. In this case, clearly it's a message from China that if you don't do anything, this guy will spend 11 years in jail.
Mr. Trudeau has been offside with respect to China for 6 years.
With an election looming, Conservatives are calling on the Trudeau government to boycott next year's Winter Olympics in Beijing. Saint-Jacques agrees, saying Canada shouldn't lend itself to another Chinese propaganda effort like the one in 2008.
And Canada and the U.S., after speaking with allies to get as much support as possible, should announce that Canada and the U.S. will jointly offer to host the next Winter Olympics.
I think what we're missing, and the opposition is pushing on, is what is our policy towards China?
Some say assembling allies for symbolic displays only goes so far.
And I think we need to see the kind of policy the Europeans are coming up with, the Americans are now looking at it. We should be doing this.
That's Evan Dyer reporting for us tonight. Thank you for watching our show. We'd just like to remind you, if you're not already doing so, you can watch on CBC.com. You can also watch live on Facebook, CBC Gem, or YouTube. And give us a follow on Instagram. As Quebec prepares for vaccine passports, we hear from teachers there, like educators across the country, worried about the return to school. That's next. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. Now, Halifax is trying to make sidewalk patios more accessible for blind people. As Nicola Seguin reports, the municipal government is requiring all restaurants with sidewalk licenses to take part in the project.
For a blind person, obstacles are everywhere. Things many of us don't notice, like sandwich boards, bike racks, and patios, can pose a danger for those who use a cane to get around.
There's so many of them out there, I'd probably have to sit down and think about them and write them all out.
Patios that only have a rope and post barrier can be a risk because the open space can't be detected by a cane.
There's nothing there to indicate that there's something coming up like that. That's how it's dangerous to us, because we can, like I say, trip over a table, fall over somebody, and there we go, their food's on the ground.
The city says they received feedback from a blind resident about patio accessibility last month and wanted to act immediately. So by August 30th, the more than 80 establishments in the city with patios on the sidewalk or road will be required to include a cane-detectable barrier at ground level. Though many restaurants agree with making their space more accessible, there are some difficulties.
The knowledge base of people who can help them do that is not very large here in this geographical area. Plus, if it requires special equipment, the whole supply side, there's just nothing out there.
Stewart says cost is also a factor, as many restaurants are still in debt thanks to the pandemic. Advocates say this new policy is a step in the right direction, but it has taken far too long for these issues to be taken seriously.
Organizations like CNIB and other disability groups, we've been standing on the rooftops shouting this out for years.
The city says it consulted accessibility advocates and a diversity and inclusion team to create this policy. But Greco says no positive change will occur in the lives of blind people if this rule isn't enforced.
Putting in enforcement mechanisms with teeth, I think, would help raise the bar and at least not prolong the inequity that exists when we're talking about people with disabilities.
City staff will be following up with restaurants to make sure the new standards have been met.
Greco says not everyone may think these changes are necessary because no one in their social circle has a disability, but accessible spaces are crucial. He says patios are wonderful in Canada's fleeting summer months and everyone should be able to enjoy them safely. Nicola Seguin, CBC News, Halifax.
Ontario is spelling out its new guidelines to combat its fourth wave of COVID-19. And the rules are stricter for those who are not vaccinated. As Mukta Gebrselassie tells us, the opposition government there says there's even more room to restrict.
Harley Yankovic and Gary Horton will soon be among Ontario's fully vaccinated, and they call on others to do the same.
We don't want to go into another lockdown, so it's best that everyone just works together, gets vaccinated.
As they got their second shots at this vaccine clinic today, Ontario released new guidelines for those exposed to COVID-19 cases. For the vaccinated, it calls for fewer restrictions, while the unvaccinated could self-isolate for 10 days and get 2 tests during that time. The fully vaccinated who don't have symptoms may not have to self-isolate. It all depends on your public health unit.
It's an advantage when you think about it of being vaccinated. Then even if somebody in your workplace or your school does have COVID and there was an exposure, you still will be able to continue with your work and your school.
So far, 72% of those eligible are fully vaccinated in the province. Children under the age of 12 can't get vaccines. And with the new school year around the corner, this could push parents to get their shots, says this epidemiologist.
The biggest concern epidemiologically for school openings, beyond the safety of the kids themselves, obviously, is the extent to which schools can serve to accelerate the epidemic. So we have to take steps to blunt that possibility, and this is one of those steps.
Meanwhile, calls for more steps continue. The Liberals and NDP want COVID-19 vaccinations to be mandated for the healthcare and education fields, as well as vaccine certificates across the province. So far, the government has no plans to do that, but Dmitry Slobin, who is getting his second shot today, thinks that should happen.
I interact with people every day. If I know someone is vaccinated, it'll make my job easier.
Mukta Gebrselassie, CBC News, Toronto.
Over in the province of Quebec, it's trying to implement vaccine passports. That's happening September 1st. And today, they also laid out their back-to-school plan. They're looking to create a more normal classroom setting. But as Sarah Levitt explains, some teachers and parents feel this just won't play out well.
It's more like something looking like normal.
School won't be exactly like it was before COVID, but something close to it. That means, like Alberta, Quebec students in elementary and high schools will still have to wear masks, just not while seated in the classroom. Gone, too, are the classroom bubbles.
We have to walk a narrow path between allowing the students to come back to a normal way of life and fighting this pandemics.
So while sports and activities are back, vaccine passports will be required for high school students taking part in certain high-risk extracurricular activities. Critics, though, say the province is not responding to the threat posed by the more contagious Delta variant, particularly because those under 12 can't get vaccinated and remain vulnerable.
We have no bubbles, we have no distancing between students, and ventilation is still an issue. So yeah, I'm very concerned.
To tackle the issue of ventilation, Quebec says 90,000 carbon dioxide readers will be installed in all classrooms, but not before mid-December. The readers help detect poor indoor air quality and potential problems with ventilation.
What I see is that, okay, we're going to put some detectors and it's going to be good for us in the long run. But for me, it's pressing.
With a daughter in high school and another in elementary school, Clermont is worried. Premier François Legault, though, says there is no need for worry.
It's secure, it's under control. There's no risk for our children, and it's not worse than anywhere else in the world.
Still, Quebec's education minister says the safety of the students is first in his mind, and measures will be adjusted if the situation with the pandemic changes. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
Demonstrations today by nurses in Alberta protesting the province's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and a proposed 3% cut on their wages. Paige Parsons has more on the Nurses' Day of Action and how the province of Alberta is responding.
It's disheartening, to be honest.
It's been a stressful 18 months for this emergency room nurse. But as a fourth wave of COVID-19 looms, she and other Alberta nurses are bracing for another challenge. The province wants to cut their wages by 3%, along with other changes they say could amount to losing 5% of their salary.
Essentially, we're going to lose a lot of nurses because of it, and that's going to affect patient care. It's hard to provide proper patient care when you don't have proper staffing.
The United Nurses of Alberta held 25 information pickets outside healthcare facilities across the province today. The union is in bargaining for a new collective agreement and hoping to drum up public support for nurses in their fight to stop the cuts.
They're tired, they're morally injured, and to have this on top of that is just a slap in the face. It's just shock and disbelief.
Speaking to CBC last month, the union's president said support for a strike is growing. In a statement today, the province's finance minister says Alberta needs to find savings in public sector spending, saying reaching a new collective agreement with UNA is essential for the province. The reality is that Alberta spends more money per person on healthcare than other large provinces, and this can't continue. Cutting nurses' salaries could also have consequences for Albertans, says this expert.
The research has shown very conclusively that fewer nurses means increased patient mortality. So when we don't have enough nurses working in our healthcare, it means that more patients die.
If the union and Alberta Health Services can't come to an agreement that Cook thinks is fair, she'd consider leaving.
Absolutely. Even just leaving the nursing profession altogether. There's so many different options for us.
Bargaining talks are set to continue through the rest of the week. Paige Parsons, CBC News, Edmonton.
The Taliban has seized several more provincial capitals in Afghanistan. Coming up, we'll bring you the latest on its blitz of the country's northeast.
There is no end to the fires that have already scarred mountainsides and blackened forests in British Columbia. Thousands of men are battling the flames, but even when they stop one fire, lightning starts another somewhere else. Tonight, they're especially worried about the community of North Bend, 190 kilometers northeast of Vancouver. Catherine Wright reports.
The fires just won't let up. For the third week in a row now, people are threatened. This time, the culprit is the so-called Fra Fire in southwestern British Columbia. It's forced about 300 people to evacuate the town of North Bend.
It's pretty scary, actually. You're thinking, what do you take, what do you take, what do you take? We've grabbed pictures and kids' baby books and stuff, and some clothes. And
we own the center part of the town, the whole 10 acres, the whole hotel and all the houses and the cafe across the street. We own all that, so yeah, it doesn't make you feel too good, but
it is scary, all right.
We just have to wait and take it, see what happens.
North Bend is a railway town on the Fraser River. It sits at the foot of a high mountain ridge. The fire is burning just behind the ridge, but occasionally it falls over the mountain and heads toward the town. It's come as close as 1 kilometer. If too many fires come over the ridge, North Bend and its railway could be burned to the ground. And there's an outside chance fire could jump the Fraser River and head for the logging town of Boston Bar. That town is on evacuation alert. The fire was caused by weeks of hot, dry weather and lightning. Arson is not suspected. In North Bend, most people have obeyed the evacuation order, but some, like Larry Bazook, haven't.
I don't know if there's really anything too much to worry about. The helicopter's been flying back and forth here, but they don't seem to be too panicky, so I guess I'm not going to get too panicky yet.
Fire has also forced the evacuation of an Indian reserve near Harrison Lake, to the south of North Bend, and there are hundreds of other fires throughout the province. Right now, 816 fires are burning, 42 are out of control. More than 2,000 square kilometers of forest have been destroyed. That's almost half the size of Prince Edward Island. It's hundreds of millions of dollars worth of timber. And fighting the fires is costing British Columbia a fortune, $57 million so far. It's almost turning into one big job creation project. 6,000 young men are now working, fighting fires, and more are being hired every day. Catherine Wright, CBC News, Vancouver.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
In acute care, staff is being increased in ERs to meet expected demand, and additional measures are being taken to keep people in hospital cool and safe.
The province is trying to reassure British Columbians that it is prepared to help people during this heat wave. Temperatures in the high 30s are expected again for the next few days. BC has also increased the number of emergency call takers in case of high 911 call volume.
You know, there's no stopping that raging fire.
Those hot conditions are not good for wildfires, and the wind is expected to pick up. As temperatures do cool next week, smoke could dissipate, but depending on any new fire starts or increased fire activity from the heat wave, hazy skies may linger into next week, especially in the interior. A 5-year-old boy has been attacked by a coyote in Stanley Park. Now, this comes after a long string of bites in the forest since December. It happened last night around 9:30 at Prospect Point. The boy was running ahead of his parents when the coyote lunged and bit him on the leg. The parents chased the animal away. Now conservation officers are once again asking people not to go to the park. The sexual misconduct investigation into Canada's Chief of Defence Staff has ended with no criminal charges. Now, Admiral Art MacDonald says he wants to return to his post after the probe made him step aside for months. As Ashley Burke tells us, the federal government isn't planning to put him back on the job soon.
Admiral Art MacDonald held the military's top job for just a month.
It is indeed an extraordinary privilege.
Then stepped aside amid a sexual misconduct investigation. Now, 5 months later, has decided to return to his command post immediately. But the defense minister says not so fast.
Admiral MacDonald will remain on leave while we review this situation.
Here's the situation. On Friday, the military said MacDonald would not face criminal charges because the evidence doesn't support that. This after a female junior officer came forward alleging an incident of sexual misconduct aboard a warship a decade ago. Today, MacDonald's legal team released a statement saying now that he has been exonerated, it is appropriate for Admiral MacDonald to return to his duties as CDS. Given that it was his decision to step aside, it is now his decision, indeed obligation, to return to his duties. But that decision isn't completely his. The Chief of Defence Staff serves at the pleasure of the Prime Minister and can be dismissed at any time.
The position of Chief of Defence Staff must always uphold the highest standard within the Canadian Armed Forces because of the responsibility that position and the weight that it holds.
The behavior of leaders like MacDonald should clear a higher bar than not being criminal, say those who experience sexual trauma in the forces.
That is not the standard Canadians or Canadian Forces members expect of their Chief of Defence Staff. We expect much, much better.
Others say leadership is a privilege.
I think that he doesn't really have the moral authority to lead the Canadian Forces at this moment in time. You know, it's a real watershed moment for the military.
A watershed moment where those who report sexual misconduct want to be heard, not dismissed. In a statement, the Privy Council office did say that public office holders are required to perform their duties in a manner above simply acting within the law. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Taliban is continuing its rapid offensive in Afghanistan. In 6 days, insurgents have taken 9 provincial capitals. As Dominic Valitis reports, the group now controls about 2/3 of the country.
The speed of the Taliban's advance has shocked Afghanistan's government and its allies, including the United States. Its fighters now control 65% of the country, having taken 9 of 34 provincial capitals in just 6 days. 3 of those have gone in the last 24 hours alone. Other provincial capitals currently at risk include Farah and Herat in the west, and Lashkargah and Kandahar in the south. But we're also hearing reports out of Russia today, and these are reports quoting the Russian defense minister, that the Taliban has also taken control of Afghanistan's borders with Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, while US media reports citing unnamed intelligence officials say the group's fighters could isolate the capital Kabul within the next 30 days and even take it over completely within 90. Now, the US military is, of course, still assisting government forces to take on the Taliban. But yesterday, the US President Joe Biden urged Afghans to unite and fight for their homeland.
The United States, I'll insist we continue to keep the commitments we made of providing close air support, making sure that their Air Force functions and is operable, resupplying their forces with food and equipment, and paying all their salaries. They've got to want to fight.
The United Nations estimates that more than 1,000 civilians have been killed in the past month due to the fighting. It's also very concerned about reports of potential war crimes and crimes against humanity taking place on the ground. Dominic Valitis, CBC News, London.
We aren't the only province dealing with hot temperatures. Parts of Quebec are trying to get through humid, warm air, and that is making it particularly hard on some of the most vulnerable. At 6:40, you are looking at a live shot of the Long Beach Lodge in Tofino. What a view. Well, it's already hot, but the heat is expected to ramp up. Johanna will be here after the break to give us the long range. Fingers crossed it includes some rain.
Hi, my name is Chelsea Charles. I'm from Brampton, Ontario, and I'm an illustrator and graphic designer. Today I'll be showing you some of my past sketchbooks so you can get an idea of some of the progress that I've made as an illustrator. So this is the sketchbook that I submitted to college. This is a self-portrait that I did. So art's been in my life for a very long time. I was heavily influenced by cartoons and anime at a very young age, and through that it just sparked this creativity within me to create my own characters, and through it I'm able to express any feelings that I have. It's just kind of my go-to outlet. In the past few years I switched over to just drawing in my iPad. Sketchbooks just became a bit more intimidating to me in a sense. It sounds silly, but whenever I'd buy a new sketchbook, it would always just sit on my desk collecting dust because I was always too scared to ruin the first page. But I find that in my iPad I can easily just delete it and start over. Although I do still appreciate drawing a physical sketchbook, it's really what has helped me grow as an artist. For me, personally, I just find that this is what's clicking with me right now. Last month I read a BuzzFeed article about a Black actress that was in High School Musical. She talked about her experience on the film and how she had to do her own makeup and hair, and that really resonated with me and pushed me in doing a project about focusing on Black women and Black hair, because I often find that it's underrepresented in media. So I really wanted to focus in on that in my project.
With hot weather forecast in many parts of the country, people are trying to find ways to stay cool, whether it be keeping hydrated, taking cold showers, or frequenting cooler areas. But for those experiencing homelessness, it's not that easy to take this advice. Kobina Aduro tells us about what advocates in Montreal are doing to help the homeless cope with the heat.
Definitely has made a big problem even bigger.
With the pandemic already complicating efforts to help those experiencing homelessness, Scott Arnold says these extremely hot days are tough.
We see a lot of sunburns, so we open up our showers. We have a distribution of sun lotions and things like that to help with skin care.
Arnold has been working at the Old Brewery Mission for 15 years. He and his staff are doing all that they can to protect their clients from the heat. When they arrive to cool off, they are able to get a meal, take a cold shower, or even nap in the cafe area.
Yeah, when they do leave here after the end of the day, you can still see that they still need a lot more help than what they are receiving, but we're doing the best we can with what we have.
Some people I spoke to say that it's nice to have somewhere to go and cool off. They say they are grateful for staff accommodating and feeding them, even if there's a wait, due to capacity restrictions.
Obviously, it gets hard to say no to somebody, especially when you've always been there in the past helping them out. But then because of constraints of space capacities and things, you're having to say no, and it's heartbreaking.
The mission's women's shelter is dealing with the same issue, so they started taking their services on the road.
We have a shuttle, we have Anita Bathe who's doing downtown Montreal, and they distribute cold water to make sure like no one will be affected by this weather.
On top of the capacity restrictions, Ben Ayed says their building needs renovations. She's calling on the provincial government to double their budget and help them serve their clients better.
The building is getting old. We would like to offer quality spaces, quality environment to who comes to our doors. So definitely next summer, we have to think about next summer. I have now EC, but I don't know if it's getting old. So some renovation has to be done.
In the meantime, the city of Montreal is extending the hours of public places so anyone can have a spot to cool down. Kobina Aduro, CBC News, Montreal.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now. Joe, the heat, obviously not good for the wildfire situation. We've also seen a lot of smoke in the interior all summer. I feel like we've been spared a little bit in the Fraser Valley, Metro Vancouver. Is that going to change?
We have totally been spared, Anita. Some of the best air quality this summer here on the West Coast, anywhere in Canada. Some smoke models are now showing the chance for some smoke to drift in starting tomorrow afternoon, but really Friday could be our day for a hazy one across the South Coast. And as we keep hearing health officials saying, it's a compounding issue with the heat and the fine particulate matter from the wildfire that's adding an extra layer to those at risk. I want to show you the fire danger rating map for today. We are seeing that just creep up very quickly across the province. High to extreme for now much of British Columbia. One more day, most of the province will be orange and red. By the time we hit Saturday, most of BC could be red. That means explosive fire conditions. And I just want to pause you on Saturday because with explosive fire conditions, it means our existing fires will continue to burn and grow because fuels will dry out quickly in these kinds of heat and low humidity levels for the interior. But we don't have a lot of opportunity for new fire starts. We don't have a lot of lightning under this high pressure ridge. I want to just take you through to Sunday, though, and you can really see that contrast between the green and the red. This is as that cold front sweeps through, bringing marine air relief to us on the South Coast. So Sunday afternoon, that's our day to feel those breezes. An end to our heat wave will come, but you can still see mid-20s above our seasonal. It just won't be the oppressive 30s. But this collision of air masses likely to spark up lightning strikes for the interior. Hard to say if it'll come with any rain. Thunderstorms definitely a concern, as is the gusty winds. So we have not seen a setup like this where we've got days of heat. You can see the heat warnings and air quality statements followed by a dry cold front. So far, the ends to our previous two heat domes have been a little more gradual. This is concerning. We'll have more of an idea of how that end will happen in the next couple of days. Definitely watching that closely. Look how dry it is, though, as I take you through the long-range forecast models. Not much, maybe extreme northwestern BC getting some showers, but it is dry for the whole province. Tomorrow is a big day for us. It'll be our hottest day in this heat wave. You won't notice much of a difference, though, for Friday or Saturday. Look at those overnight lows. That's for YVR, sticking in and around the 20s for inland sections. And that sweet icon of showers Sunday night into Monday. I'll be holding on to that one, and I'll let you know what the percentage looks like as we get closer.
That is good stuff. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, some stunning footage to share with you now. A group of transient orcas caught on camera right near the shores of Saturna Island here in BC.
Because there's a seal right there, and he's looking for the...
Wow, that is close. Cell phone footage shared with CBC shows the cetaceans swimming in the waters of Shell Beach. Experts tell us the 3 whales were transient and not part of our local whale population. Too bad, considering there was a baby with them. And more aqua news, some good news for BC's ocean lovers. However, nearly 1 year after it closed its doors to the public, the Vancouver Aquarium is set to reopen, albeit under new management. In April, former owner Oceanwise sold the popular attraction to U.S. tourism company Herschend Enterprises, citing high costs due to COVID-19. A soccer camp hosted by the Burnaby RCMP is back up and running. And this year, they were even more popular, with hundreds of kids wanting to play. That story coming up.
Well, we are now in the midst of the hot, hazy days of summer, sometimes referred to as the dog days of summer. But what exactly does that term mean? Well, it turns out the answer is in the sky.
Sirius, the star, is located in the Greater Dog constellation. It's located right next to Orion, and Orion is the hunter. So the dog that's next to him is supposed to be following him because he's the hunter.
Nowadays, some people think the term refers to dogs going crazy in the heat or being lazy and moping around. But that's not quite right. In fact, in order to find the origins of the term, you have to go all the way back to ancient Greece and Rome.
So when it comes time to dog days, and that's just the period of the year, right, when Sirius rises in the morning. So it's usually kind of the latter part of July and the beginning of August. When you get to Greece, though, and Rome, there's that greater emphasis on kind of the destructive power of the heat and so forth at this time of year. So when they talk about the dog star or Sirius, it's often talked about in terms of, bringing extreme heat or extremes.
In fact, Sirius may not even rise during the hottest point of the year. It all depends on the latitude where you live. The further south you are, the earlier it'll rise in the year. The further north, the later it'll rise. There's still some debate as to when exactly the dog days of summer end, but it's generally agreed on that August 11th is the final day. And if you want to catch Sirius in the night sky before then, here are some tips.
Get out of the city. It's really easy to just, if you live in the city, just drive on a grid road. I live about 35 kilometers outside Regina, and there's still light pollution from Regina, but it's not too bad. If you get a chance to go camping or something, Grasslands National Park and Cypress Hills parks are both dark sky preserves, and they're some of the darkest skies in North America.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
New episodes of Pieces are now available. Host Jeremy Ratt goes on a journey of self-discovery as he explores his Indigenous roots. Learn more at cbc.ca/pieces and never miss an episode of your favorite CBC drama or comedy again with the free CBC Gem app. Plus, you can live stream CBC Vancouver News. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca.
The Burnaby RCMP's youth soccer camp is back on this summer after a one-year hiatus. Volunteers say the demand for the free camp has been unprecedented.
Grab the ball, get ready, pass to your partner.
I can say that this year we did have a overwhelming number of applicants that applied for these camps, to the point where we had to have a cap number.
Out of 213 applicants, 100 local children between 8 and 13 were invited to work on their soccer skills and teamwork. The 4-day camp is spread over this week and next, and this year, former Whitecap and current RCMP constable is coaching.
It's about engaging with the community, and gives us an opportunity as police officers to actually get out and mingle with the kids and meet them on a more personal level and have fun with them.
The camp is funded by the City of Burnaby and a civil forfeiture grant. Next year, Moore says they hope to expand the program. Okay, well, plenty of people have seen their hometown on a screen, especially here in Vancouver on movies or television, but not that many can say they were in a feature film shot in their hometown. That's what's happening in Winnipeg, where a local cast and crew are shooting a movie that has dialogue in both English and Punjabi. Sam Sampson has more on hopes for the production.
OMG, I'm in the biggest movie ever. That is so cool.
This is a big deal for 11-year-old Gopika Koplish and 9-year-old Korea Garg. This is their first feature film, and to boot, it's in 2 languages they speak easily, Punjabi and English.
At school, sometimes when we have our own friends that actually speak our language, it's kind of like that. That in some lines we're gonna be speaking English, some lines in Punjabi, and then it's kind of gonna be like vice versa, kind of like
realistic.
Yeah, it's realistic.
Scene 16, genre, take 1.
The film 13 follows a boy in high school as he faces decisions like whether or not to try drugs. Director Roshan Prince says it's one of the first films to be shot in Winnipeg in both languages with an almost entirely local Punjabi cast and crew. Prince moved to Winnipeg from Punjab in 2016, and he just opened a performing arts school in the fall. Prince has been in more than 30 films in different countries, and he's a singer whose music videos like this one have more than 14 million views on YouTube. 13 is his directorial debut.
Canada is a big market for Punjabi film. There are a lot of Punjabi in Canada, even North America, USA. So it's a big platform also and a big market for Punjabi films.
Well, for me, it's a dream come true.
NDP MLA for Burroughs, Diljit Brar, is flexing his acting chops, playing a school principal in the film. Brar has also taught performing arts in Winnipeg for years, and he listed off some of the positives of this project.
One, that the kids and local artists, they're getting a break to be in a movie. Second, we are preserving our language and culture. The third, we are educating the communities about the sensitive issues. For example, for this movie, 13, it talks about kids who are in their teenagers and parents are busy, right? So how to handle your kids and what are the problems? So it's education, it's the economy, it's job generation.
The film is scheduled to be released online this November. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Thanks for watching CBC Vancouver News tonight. We are back tomorrow, of course, but for updates on the stories we've brought you, Dan Burritt is here at 11 o'clock after the National with Ian Hannah-Mansing. Have a good evening.